So this is the 40K companion podcast to an article that I recently posted up on my blog. And the link to my blog is down there in the info box, where we touch a little more in depth on each checkpoint with what we're going to take a look at. The question: how long does it take to get good at 40K with one specific army, with the army that you're playing? Whether it's your first army or whether it's a second army, what is the realistic timeline for that? Now, I have to say, when you're starting out in 40K, it's, this is just from my experience, it's easier than someone who has been playing 40K for a while. Now, that seems kind of weird, right? Because there's all this past experience and battle knowledge you can draw on. But as we're going to see as this podcast expands out, this challenge, the challenge of being able to go on autopilot, being able to free yourself from the math hammer, being able to embrace, sounds very Slanesh, embrace the passion of your army. And for a long time, years ago, I counted myself among the Sons of Russ. I was playing Space Wolves, and I decided to jump in on Eldar playing Sam Han. And for those of you who have been following me for a long time, perhaps too long, a decade ago, this was the genesis of Way of Sam Han. Got my army ready, got my jet bikes ready, got my Wave Serpent ready. At the time, the kit, the Forge World kit, I was ready to go. And my first game was against Brother Captain James, who was playing Tyranids. James is an excellent, one of the top Ultramarine players that I know, kind of in our circle. And he's an even better Tyranid player. So I knew this was going to be a tough fight. But at the time, the stats for jet bikes and Eldar versus Space Marines at the time, they were similar. Jet bikes had a 3-up save. They were toughness 4, 3 base plus 1 for the bike. They moved faster. The Shuriken catapults were the same strength. It kind of worked out. Okay, I hit on 4s, but it was twin linked at the time, which allowed you to re-roll dice, re-roll misses. It was comparable. So I played my first game, and I get wiped out almost to the last jet bike. I was so, I didn't know what to expect. I guess I thought I would do pretty well. I got such a beatdown. I was honestly ready to drop kick the army into the trash and go back to playing Space Wolves. And just what the heck happened? And it took about 5 or 6 games to realize I was playing my army like Space Wolves. I was playing them like Space Marines. On the one hand, I can't do that. Again, this is at the time when a Space Wolf is like 18 points and a jet bike is like 28 points. I just don't have the model mass on the table. So as soon as I was able to free myself from past experience, my 40K knowledge in that army accelerated very, very quickly. So if you're new to 40K and you're feeling overwhelmed, you are actually going to have an easier time learning your army than someone with army baggage, or especially in my case, addition baggage. At this point, all the additions of 40K are just crunching into my head, and sometimes I pull out weird rules that haven't existed for like 2 or 3 generations of the rules in there. So here's where we're going to start. The first thing is to just play games. To just play, get in as many games as you can. The first, I want to say, I got to give you a number. First 10 to 15 games, they don't count. Can your ego allow yourself to free you from winning games? Now, on the opposite end, I still do my best to win games, but I've won a lot of games, I've lost a lot of games, and a lot of things in between. These days, yes, winning is important, but for me, what's more important is having a good time with my gaming friends, my opponent, because we're both taking time out of real life, work, and annoying things like school to play 40K. So I want it to be fruitful. I want it to be fun. And above all else, where I am right now in my kind of 40K experience, I want to be entertained. I'm like Maximus, right? Are you not entertained? I want something cool to happen on the tabletop. I want my Cornate Lord to go in and just like decimate with the murder sword. I want those Marines to make some awesome armor saves. My Grey Knights up there on the hill, like Draken's Last Stand from the 3rd edition rulebook cover, where we're just against the hordes, just something, even if it's a defeat, right? Something really, really interesting, something really, really fun. But when you're new to 40K, winning has a higher weight to it, because at a very easy level, you want to know, hey, do I know what's going on? Do I understand 40K? Well, if I'm winning games, I must understand 40K because I'm doing something right. That logic is correct. That logic is correct on there. It's a war game. But you have to let your first couple of games just learn the army and figure out what's going on. If you can free yourself from that detachment, pre-qualify them, it will make the learning cycle much, much better. Now, within that, what you're also trying to do is not only win the mission, but also look at each individual unit and try to make the best tactical decisions. I'd say listen to my podcast and follow other channels. I'm assuming you're doing your YouTube homework. I assume you're out on the forums and you're out on the blogs and you're checking out other stuff. That is pre and post game training. Absolutely, right? Absolutely. But in that moment of playing the game and rolling the dice, you're going to do the best you can, and you're going to try to squeeze every ounce of knowledge out of the units on your table. And if you arrive at a point where you're losing, where never give up, because the dice, the Emperor, the Dark Gods, they reward. Emperor protects. But if you're positive that you are going to lose this game, don't give up. Play out to the end. Don't disgrace the Emperor. But more importantly, now switch over and say, okay, what I have left on the table, I'm going to try and tactically make the best decisions and make my opponent earn that victory with the units I have, right? I'm going to dig in. I'm going to do my best. This is going to get your learning curve. So that's going to happen. Now we move to the second step. We haven't even talked about tactics yet. You just got to play games. Now you're a little bit more familiar with your army. You understand how things work. Now we can start to get into tactics. Now we can try to start doing things and looking at list building and various ways of combining units and delivery systems and threat bubbles and all the stuff that generally I try to share here on my podcast and on my blog. The link to my blog is down there under this video, and kind of playing and exploring in that way. How long does this phase last? Well, it never really ends once you've entered it. But the danger is for a lot of players, or I should say challenge. The challenge is a lot of players never leave this zone. Because it works. You'll win games. But I want you to become truly great. I want true cornate glory for you on there. And if you're not a follower of the Dark Gods, I will seduce you to the Dark Gods with that. The next step is to... I'm trying to look for a term to capture it, like get all kind of zen here. The next step is to go no mind, Mushin, right? Where now your army is just playing on the tabletop. You don't have to think, okay, there's 5 Terminators here, so if I move up a group of jet bikes, that'll generate this amount of dice. I'll get 10 hits, 5 wounds, and then they'll make 2 saves. They'll lose 1 Terminator. They'll shoot back. They'll wipe out my jet bike squad. So actually I want to commit 2 squads plus my Vipers. That dice mechanic calculation, that math hammer, that's what I call math hammer. That's important in 40K. But while you're calculating that stuff in your head, you're missing out other opportunities. As you learn your army, so with my Samhan Warhost, at some point through each edition, I've been playing this army since 4th edition, and each edition I know more or less what units I go up against, how I'm going to perform on average. Yes, the dice sometimes get swingy and we're surprised and we're entertained, but I don't have to think about the math hammer. This is where we want to get. This is moving from that second level to this third level, because now you're going to be able to kind of detach yourself from the thinking. And now instead of focusing on your army, because you know exactly how to do and play it, you start watching your opponent. You start seeing the mistakes that they make. And I don't mean that in a critical way. Look, you're making mistakes too. But when your opponent makes a mistake, there's the duality of, can you see it in the first place? That's half of it. And the second half is, can you capitalize on it? Well, if you're thinking about the theory hammer, if you're thinking about the math hammer, if you're calculating all your units and running the tactics, which is important, you're not going to be able to put yourself in a position to see and capitalize on it. That third level is where you just get completely taken by surprise. There's an amazing 40K player, Ragnar. I've had the chance to play him a couple of times in tournaments. It's been a couple of years, but every time I've played him, he's just utterly destroyed me. And what's interesting is, if you looked at his Chaos and his Dark Angel army, and I mean this with massive amounts of respect, on paper you're like, that army's not that great. It doesn't use the current hotness. It has okay synergy, but what's so great about it? But he has mastered. He's kind of a great example of this third wave, this third level, where he's just punishing you for your mistakes. He's catching me, and I'm like, how did this happen? How he just appears out of nowhere, and my guys are getting blown up, and my Tyranids are getting gunned down. Like, what the heck is happening? I can't counter him. That's because I'm making mistakes that I can't see that he's seeing, that he has positioned himself. That's where we want to go. That's where I try to exist in every single game. But, look, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. These are the steps. This is where we're going. So how long does it take to get good at 40K? Those are the steps. Put in the time, listen to the podcasts, watch the battle reports, my channel, other channels, everything. Soak up that 40K knowledge and cut down that learning curve for you.